Good morning. Today we are joining with many people around the world in observance of Easter, a day that honors an important center point of the Christian faith. And we at the center, we bring a metaphysical interpretation to the observance that allows us to embrace the spiritual meaning in addition to the literal meaning of the story, so that we can find personal resonance in the story and explore the story of our own transformation. So if you are not a Christian or you don't know anything about the Easter tradition, it is the celebration of the resurrection of Jesus of Nazareth, who according to Christian scripture was raised from the dead 3 days after being crucified the Friday before. In some traditions, there is a 40-day period leading up to today. It's called Lent. It's a period of fasting and contemplation and spiritual discipline moving towards this moment. Interestingly, the word Easter itself appears nowhere in the Christian Bible. Yeah, and there's no early church mention of celebrating Easter. Easter, like Christmas, it developed later on in history. And because of the commercialization of Easter, some Christians prefer to call today Resurrection Day, to help return the focus to what is at the heart of their faith tradition, which is a message about the return, the transformation, and the ascension. Now, mystical traditions hold that anyone who is walking on the path of awakening, anyone who is attempting to live a spiritual life, anyone who is journeying towards the realization of their oneness with divinity, anyone who's exploring their true identity will at some point in some way go through all of the stages in the story of Jesus' life. For each step represents an inevitable part of the journey towards the realization of the true nature of our being. Take, for example, the imagery of a divine birth. And think of it as a moment in our lives when the miraculous happens and Spirit takes form as something new that brings with it hope and encouragement. Or think of the imagery of that part of the story of the ruthless leader, King Herod figure. Maybe you've had one in your family or in your circle of friends, but seriously, some of us have had someone in our life who sought to deny our uniqueness, and in response we either flee away or we flee within. However, despite their efforts, you came through, you got up, stepped forward to complete your story and become the you that you are today. Or think of the imagery of the temptation in the wilderness. Maybe you've been through times when you've been distracted from your purpose, but you had to be strong. Maybe you've even been tempted to give it all up, or you've been tempted to fall into discouragement because of the expectations of others around you. And yet, despite all of the voices of criticism around you or sometimes inside of you, you still came through. You had to rise up, you had to show up, and you had to live out your life to get to here. Or think of the imagery of baptism. I'm thinking of those moments of starting over, starting fresh, beginning again, because we felt a calling, something powerful in us. Maybe we had to press the reset button and rededicate ourselves to live the truth, like that moment when you decide, okay, now is the time for me to be the human being I was born to be. Or think of the imagery of the times of deep questioning, the doubt moment in the garden, the long, dark night of the soul when Despite your best efforts and intentions, you still wanted to get out of the assignment life gave you. Maybe it's this time when you didn't want to face what it takes to move on, but despite the lack of support around you, or even inside of you, you had to keep moving. You had to rise up. You had to show up. Or think of the imagery of betrayal. Maybe you've had or will have actual betrayals, literal ones, or symbolic ones. I'm thinking of those times when everything that you've looked to for comfort or meaning falls away, empties out, dries up, and what you thought you could count on doesn't work anymore. And still, you've got to keep on going on, and you did, sometimes quite alone. Or think of the imagery of crucifixion. I think of that as the times in our life of dismantling, of unstructuring, where we die to our limitations. In other words, we let them go, and in the process sometimes even feel forsaken or forgotten or abandoned, but you weren't. Because when it's over, it's not over. Or think of the imagery of resurrection and how by the grace of the power of Spirit's eternal love, we all get to have moments of returning, of getting up. We come back, lifted up in what is really a whole new level, transfigured, because what was is no longer recognizable, and what is dynamic. Easter is that story. And for metaphysicians, it can be an annual reminder for us of the Spirit that makes all of this possible. The Spirit of life that lives deeply within our very own lives, not only in our cells and fibers and tissues in our bodies, but also in our minds, in our emotions, in our dreams, in our hopes, and in our identity. The Spirit that moves with and through all things and lifts everything up over and over again above the sorrows, challenges, and limitations of the world. So today, if you like, can be a reminder to turn to that Spirit within and to not forsake it and to not forget it. To remember that it is present even in the darkest moments and in the deepest trials, as well as in those less dramatic times when we struggle with fear and doubt and disappointment or sadness or financial uncertainty. To turn to it and remember to call it to work through us so that it can do through us what must be done for us to keep on moving and for us to remember that there is always something more to us than our daily human experiences. Have you ever been buried in your daily human experiences? So much that you forgot the truth of the light that lives in you? I have. I've been remembering an experience of being buried in a job that I hated. Trapped. I didn't think I could take another day. But I couldn't leave it because without it I couldn't pay my rent. Now, what seems like a cruel trick of fate, it turns out, was real life on-the-job training for ministry. Because I had to deal with people. And it taught me patience because I didn't have the luxury of returning meanness with meanness. I didn't realize I was being transformed right there when all the time it seemed like I was stuck in a prison, and yet I came out of it better than what I was when I went into it. Now, you couldn't tell me that when I was going through it. No. You couldn't tell me there was going to be a happy ending. There's a silver lining. No. I had to go through it to get to the other side and to be transformed into something other than what I was when I entered. Though I've used the memory of this job to help me so many times since then, during times when I feel stuck, as a reminder to call the power of Spirit into action. In other words, to not get buried in my human experiences. In other words, to allow my material senses to give way to my spiritual senses. You see, material senses told me that the job was a dead-end tomb. Spiritual senses would have told me, no, this is not an ending. You're being transformed for goodness. The destination is always freedom. So I've learned now in times when I struggle with stuckness to say to myself in the silence of my own heart something like this: the transforming power of Spirit as love is at work in my life right now. In my family, in my relationships, in my understanding of this world and its events, in my body, so that it may be a temple of the living Spirit. And even though I may not know what to do or what is next, there is something in me that knows and knows that it knows, and that something is working to arise anew in me. So that resurrection time can be for me a time to check in and ask, am I buried in the experiences of my life? To ask, is there any possibility of looking at my life with the view that it's not over? To ask, can I see that I'm not only my job, but also a channel for Spirit's love to express itself through that work? Can I see that I'm not only my relationships, but also a channel for Spirit's love to express through all of my relationships, even the difficult ones? Can I see that I'm not only my body, but also a spirit witnessing life through the miracle of biology and traveling with it for now to birth something that has never been expressed before? And today can be for me also a time to check in with those parts of my life that seem stuck, where change and wholeness seem impossible, where people appear to be unreachable, where forgiveness doesn't even seem practical, where I'm certain, and I tell myself, this is always going to be just like this, so that I can remember to say again to myself in the silence of my heart something like this: the transforming power of Spirit as love is at work in my life right now, in my family, in my relationships, in my understanding of this world and its events, in my body, so that it can be a vessel, a temple of the living Spirit, in my dreams and in my aspirations. And even though I may not know what to do or what is next for me, there is something within me that knows and knows that it knows, and that something is working, fixing to rise up in me now. And not only that, today can also be a wonderful day to celebrate the resurrected parts of our lives. Those parts that, as a result of the work we have already done to bring light and joy and wholeness into our lives, are changed. Maybe the habits that we've dropped, maybe the stuck places that we've walked through, maybe the hurt we've healed, maybe the love we've rekindled, because Celebrating these gains will help us, will encourage us when it is time to turn to those places in our life that remain unrisen, not yet transformed, still in the tomb, so that we can say to our own hearts something like this. Would you read it with me? The transforming power of Spirit is at work in my life right now, in my family, in my relationships, in my understanding of this world and its events, in my body and also in my dreams. And even though I may not know what to do or what is next, there is something in me that knows and knows that it knows. And that something is working to awaken in me right now. Today, as the Christian world celebrates a message of hope and promise, let us too open our hearts to the possibility of renewal and rebirth. No, more than the possibility. Let us turn to the idea that renewal and rising above limitations are as close to us as our next thoughts and our next breaths. My friends, today is the last time I will speak to you for 3 months. And I will miss you very, very much. Because in the past month or so, leading up to the wedding last week, I have fallen madly in love with my community all over again. Yeah. I don't remember a time when I have felt so accepted and supported and held. I almost regret that I have to go away at all. However, we have made it so that there will be no reason for you to miss me at all. We have a lineup of extraordinary speakers who are coming to tell you the truth of your being and share with you the life-affirming message of Science of Mind. Like, for example, next week, our own spiritual leader from our whole movement, Dr. Ken Gordon, is coming. It's a big deal. It's a big deal. You can't miss that. And the week after, Dr. David Alt, whose magnificent work with impoverished children in Cambodia and bringing water to people who have no access to fresh water is heart-opening. It's a big deal. And Kathy Zavada, who's coming to give us not only the music but the message. Oh, if that doesn't melt your heart, then we cannot help you. And Reverend Kevin Ross from Unity in Sacramento. Don't bother wearing your socks because he will blow them out of the building. Reverend Cynthia James, our singing minister who comes and talks to us about the power of living your life story. And Jeffon Seeley, oh my word, a spoken word artist from Atlanta. Young, vibrant, new, amazing, and our local resident mystic, Reverend Deborah Johnson, who cannot give the same message twice. And Reverend Abigail Schreier, one of the youngest ministers in our movement. Not only that, our local mystics, Reverend Tara Steele, Reverend Joyce DeFolla, and Reverend Kim Kaiser. So I ask you to take care of each other and to take care of this place and continue to support it and nurture it and to come and to be fed so that when I return, you will hardly remember who I was. When I do come back, I will be going on the AIDS life cycle, and the whole team is at the bake sale table today. We are so happy to be representing you by riding from San Francisco to Los Angeles to raise funds for HIV services and AIDS awareness and education, to help make this world a slightly better place for people. Almost all of us, our 10 riders, have reached the minimum $3,000 fundraising goal. There are a few of us that haven't, which is why we have a bake sale today. And that's where I'll be standing to say farewell to you and buy a cookie. So please stop by and say hello. But for now, let us take a moment to share in prayer together. So I invite you to breathe in deeply. Exhale, letting your eyes close. And to let our thoughts turn to that eternal power, the presence of the living Spirit within. And we call it the transforming power this morning, that which is at work in us right now. That which through us, through me, through you, expresses into our family, into our relationships, into our world. So we may remember that even though I do not know what to say, what to do, how a thing shall happen, there is something within me at work. There is something within me that knows and knows that it knows. And it is expressing, fixing to wake up and reawaken and realign and move me forward in the direction of goodness and freedom. And so it is that I awaken to my true nature. And I take a moment with appreciation to acknowledge and celebrate those faith traditions all over, whether in synagogues, churches, temples, or mosques, who each are celebrating in their own way to affirm the oneness of the divine Spirit through the human condition. The transforming power of Spirit is at work in my life right now, in my family, in my relationships, in my understanding of this world and its events, in my body, and also in my dreams. And together we say, and so it is.